Hello, my name is Sully and welcome back to my channel. So I read a lot of books in May specifically, not at any point in the rest of the year, but in May I absolutely killed it. I think I read like 7 books in May. I read 8 books in May. Insane. The rest of the year, for the other like what, 4 months, I read a combined 7. So either way, we're doing a recent reads wrap up. This combines all of the books that I read through March, from March through May. I didn't read anything in February. That is a combined 12 books. So let's chat, sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and we'll start off with a favorite, which is Good Spirits by B.K. Borison. I have read every single book by B.K. Borison except for her most recent other release, which is not First Time Caller, but the other one in that series. I don't remember what it's called, but I'll put the book cover up here. This is basically a retelling of The Ghost of Christmas Past, but make it a romance, make it in the 21st century. And this is the first in her new trilogy series. They're not connected at all, but a similar theme, paranormal romance books, and it's called In the Department of Hauntings and Spirits. And each book will center on a different sub-department, you know? So this one is focused on these like ghosts of Christmas past who are basically haunting people, and these ghosts are trying to help people either like make amends or correct a wrong in their life so that they can move forward in peace and happiness and all of that. And when Nolan starts haunting Harriet, neither of them have any clue as to why. All of the other people that he has haunted in the past are a little bit more, let's just say, scummy. And Harriet is just a lovely antique shop owner and just doesn't really have a lot of friends, doesn't have a love life to speak of, not much family. I mean, she has family, but it's very complicated. So they're trying to figure out why he's even there in the first place and what he can help her out with. And then, you know, maybe they kind of fall in love with each other. So loved this. This was a 5-star read. I wanted to read this in the holidays and I didn't get to it. And why do we have to read books seasonally? You know, like, why would you have to read? I mean, you don't. It's a societal concept. I literally was just under the illusion that I should be reading this in the holidays, and then I didn't get to it when I was visiting my family over December and January. So I just read it in March. Why not? And I'm pretty sure I gave this 5 stars. I should have. I gave this 4.5 stars. Absolutely loved it. It was such a sweet romance. I really enjoyed the 2 different characters of Nolan and Harriet and just the tiny little adventures that they went on, both into her past, and then his past kind of starts to bleed into the memories that they're visiting and they're not sure why. And it becomes just this tiny little bit of a mystery, both of them trying to figure out why he's there haunting Harriet, but also why certain things start to change for Nolan as well. So you're figuring that out along with them, and you're going through all of these like sweet but also really intense memories. There's a lot to do about family and this disconnect that she has with her parents and what kind of went down between her and her sister, and they were best friends for some time. So it's just a really well done story and I really enjoyed it. And then we have The Night We Met by Abby Jimenez. See, I thought this was just a very clever 1-2 punch. As you might have guessed from my intro, I hadn't been reading a lot at the beginning of the year, and I just wanted to sink a little deeper into reading, get back into it a little bit. I had had a really busy couple months at work, and I wanted a little bit of an escape. So I figured these were 2 guaranteed books by 2 of my favorite authors, just some classic romance books, and it would just be a really fun time to sink into these, reconnect with reading a little bit. Yeah, that did not work. If you have not already seen, I did an entire rant review that I think was like at least 30 minutes long about this book. So if you want my detailed thoughts, you can check out that video. I'll keep it brief here. What you should know is I was a silly goose and I did not look up the synopsis ahead of time, which I don't think would have changed my desire to read it, but maybe would have just informed me at all going into this, because it was an Abby Jimenez book. I've read every single book and short story she has ever written, all the way through to her backlist. And some I've enjoyed more than others. Some leave a little to be desired. But I figured it didn't matter what the plot was going to be. No, it does. It really, for this book, you should know what the plot is going into it, because maybe that might change your decision to read it. This is basically a love story between, who are these people's names? I don't remember any of them. Okay, there's Larissa, there's Chris, and then there's another one. Who's the other one? Oh, is he not mentioned in the frickin', are you kidding me? Mike, okay. So there's Larissa, Chris, and Mike. Larissa is dating Mike. However, the love story is between her and Mike's best friend, Chris. Already off to a strong start. So this entire story, I won't give away any spoilers, but the whole point of this book is that she is dating Mike. Mike's going through a lot of things. He's not great at communication. He's not great at sharing all of the stuff he's dealing with. And so Larissa starts getting closer to his best friend, Chris, and they start hanging out. The entire point of the book is based around the expectation that you're rooting for Larissa and Chris while she is dating someone else. And I personally have a problem with that. So that is the entirety of this book. I hated it. There was a lot of other issues going on. There's a lot of depiction of being in like a lower economic class and dealing with poverty issues and the threat of unemployment. And I don't think that was handled particularly well. There was also a nut allergy that I think was used as a plot device towards the end in a way that I don't think really aligned well with the characters of the book. You might understand that if you've read it, but it was a mess, and I think this needed quite a bit more editing to put it in a place that would be interesting. I think overall the idea of finding love when you were already in another relationship and realizing that maybe the person you are with isn't the right person for you, and that moment where you are growing, but you are growing in an opposite direction of your partner, and then you realize that there is someone who's maybe more aligned with you. I think that is an interesting story to tell, because that is sometimes the reality in people's relationships, and that is something that I think could really be interesting to explore. But I don't think the place for that is in a romance novel. I think the place for that is in literary fiction, where you're diving into this person's life and you're focusing on all these different things going on with this person's life. And then also there happens to be a part of that story that is focused on them finding love elsewhere. I think that's interesting. But if the entire book is hinging upon you rooting for a love story between these two people, while one of them for the majority of the book is in a relationship, I think that's an issue for me. So I gave that 2 stars and I hated it. Maybe would have been a 1 star if it hadn't been Abby Jimenez's writing. I do love the way that she writes stories and she writes characters, and I think it was still, there were parts of it that were still, I was gonna say good, but then I remembered all the parts that were not. You know, it's just, it was a 2 star for me. The disappointing reads continue. Once again, I thought Sarah Adams would be a surefire, just solid romance. I don't think there's any of her books that I loved. You know, I think actually I did really enjoy, what is that book called? No, I did really enjoy When in Rome, which is the first of this interconnected romance series that all takes place in Rome, Kentucky, and is basically just small town romance vibes, very interconnected community, and becomes much more of a gimmick the further the series goes on. In that first book, I think it was really sweet, it was cute, it was a fun story based off like this pop star whose car breaks down in the middle of Rome, Kentucky, and then just kind of hangs out there incognito for a while and then falls for like the pie baker of the town. Very cute, very fun. And then the remaining books were all about the siblings in that family finding love as well. And the town just became so much more gimmicky and cliche. Maybe not cliche, just like, yeah, just gimmicky. As the story went on, it became less grounded and realistic and just became its own caricature. And then also the romances just kind of fell a little bit apart every time it was about one of the siblings never having found the right one, and then of course the right one was there all along, and it was just the same thing over and over again. And then this one just had so many things that just really grated on me, and like some really small things, but that just really pissed me off. For instance, in here at some point they go to New York and it's pouring rain, right? Okay, it's pouring rain at like 1 a.m. and they go to like an apartment to stay there for the night, and then there's stuff that happens. They can't fall asleep well there, so they decide to go to the roof, right? The roof, where it was just pouring rain and there was hail, right? So they go to lie on top of the roof. The soaking wet New York City roof. Sure. And then they look at the stars. I'm sorry, what in the light pollution are you talking about? You can't see shit from the New York City buildings. The amount of light pollution in that city, you can't see the stars. You see just like not even black sky, it's like light gray sky at night. I'm sorry, there's no way you're up there looking at the stars, especially when you come from a small town of rural Rome, Kentucky, where you can definitely see the stars at night. Oh, it's so stupid. I gave this 2.5 stars. There's other things that just didn't work out for me. It just, the romance just was disjointed, maybe is the way to say it. You know, it just didn't work for me. And the entire thing is really based off the main character, Madison, who went to New York to live her dream, but then never actually explored New York, and then went through a lot of traumatic experiences in the culinary institute that she attended and how intense it was. So she moves back home and has this opportunity to start her own restaurant because of this man that just wants her around, and then they become business partners. It's also very far-fetched. I know it's a romance, so like it doesn't have to be fully believable, but I want it to be at least not weird. Like, I'm sorry, this man starts an entire business because he wants her to move back to town. Am I supposed to find that romantic? Like, that's a lot. That's a lot. Maybe it's like it's a little romantic, but it's also like, ugh, that's a lot. And then like all this pressure is on her. Yikes. So I gave that 2.5 stars. And then it got a little bit better. Once again, I was under the delusion of, let me keep trying some staple romance authors who I've read almost basically all of their work. Well, I've only read like 3 of Sarah Adams' work. She has a lot of stuff. So I went to Lori Gilmore, who wrote the Pumpkin Spice Cafe books. These books, you probably see them all over the internet. This one became like super popular, which I think this is the worst one of all of, I hated this one. Like, I don't get it. People just see pumpkin spice and they go crazy. So this is very similar in that it is in a small town. This one is called Dream Harbor. Very similar kind of idea to the Rome, Kentucky book, where it's a fictional small town, although I think Rome, Kentucky is real, but the town in that book is fictional, where it's a fictional small town. Everyone's really connected. Everyone knows what everyone else is up to. There's a lot of gossip. There's a lot of really niche, cozy shops and businesses. Everyone is like a very annoying family together, but very sweet and loving and supportive, all of that. So I read the Daisy Chain Flower Shop, which is the newest release in that series, and I think it's the last one. It was supposed to be the last one, but I think maybe she teased that there's gonna be one more. I don't remember. This one is about a flower shop owner who has seemingly been cursed for the last few years. Every time that she procures the flowers and arranges the flowers for a wedding, that wedding is then doomed to fail at some point. That marriage then dissolves at some point later, and everyone starts blaming her for these marriages falling apart. She just delivers the flowers, like, please. So she's trying to get out of that reputation. And then there is this guy in town. What does he even do? Maybe he just shows up in town. Who knows? There is a man that shows up. And they decide to start fake dating so that she can convince everyone that she is in a stable relationship and the love curse has been broken. Oh yeah, she also was engaged twice and then dumped twice, something like that. So I don't know why this whole town is blaming her for all this bullshit happening around her, but somehow it's all her fault, right? So they start dating, but then they're actually becoming really close friends, and then it becomes something more. Overall, I thought this was a really sweet story. I thought there was a lot of good going on there. I did really appreciate there was no miscommunication going on in this story. It was basically just about two people who have each had a lot of missteps in love and have a lot of kind of mistrust in long-term relationships now because of that. Both of those two people dealing with similar but different circumstances from their past and then figuring that out together. Really sweet. Only thing is that because this is the sixth book in this series of interconnected standalone romance books, every single couple from the previous book needs to make an appearance, and all of the like town favorites need to make an appearance. And so it just kind of becomes a little bit of a belabored, like, not soap opera, but it's just this rolling parade of characters that each need to have their moment. And it feels almost like a Marvel movie where everyone needs to have their favorite character pop up to have their own little moment, and then we can move on. And because it is the sixth book, there are a lot of couples and there are a lot of like random characters from this town, and all of them need to be featured in this book, and I just think that is too much. I appreciate that the reason all these couples keep showing up is because they're all within a friend group of each other, but that was a little bit more the case for the first couple books in this like interconnected series. They were like really like best friends in this group. This girl, she's just kind of extra. Like, the author ran out of the original group and then wanted to make another book and then kind of introduce this character at the end of the last one. So she's like not really in this group, which no judgment on that in any possible way, but every single couple has to show up, and I'm sorry, but at this point all these white American names are blending together and I don't remember who is who because they all sound the same. At this point, their characterization all feels very similar and they feel like the same person, and all of their like husbands or boyfriends or fiancés or partners or whatever all sound the same to me. And so I swear it is just like the same 5 people showing up every time. I can't tell them apart, and I just don't care. Like, I just don't care anymore. So like it was a sweet story. I think maybe I would have enjoyed it. Actually, no, I don't think so. I was gonna say maybe I would have enjoyed it if I hadn't read all 5 previous books. Actually, no, I'm missing one of them. I haven't read the Christmas Tree Farm one. But if I hadn't read 4 of the previous novels in this series, maybe I would have enjoyed it more. But then again, I don't think so, because the author is basically assuming that you know who these people are, but then also giving like a brief little like a recap of like, well, Ethan was, you know, the guy who showed up randomly in town and then hooked up with Bethany over here and then started running a pie shop. So she's trying to recap it for you, but it happens so many times that you're like, I'm sorry, are we like the fourth character of this novel that you were just turning to and explaining everything that's going on real quick? Like, anyways, I gave that 3.5 stars. I know I complained a lot about it. It was cute besides for those things that were just annoying, but besides for that, it was pretty cute. Then I decided to pick up the poetry collection Good Bones by Maggie Smith. So one of my friends in my writing group, Rosie, really enjoyed one of Maggie Smith's other poetry collections. It's called like Suitcases or something like that. A Suit or a Suitcase by Maggie Smith. She really enjoyed that one. My library didn't have that one available, so I wanted to check out a different poetry book by Maggie Smith, and Good Bones was available, so I figured why don't I just start off with that one. And Good Bones sounded a little familiar, and I figured out why, because one of the main poems of this collection, which it is named after, the titular Good Bones poem, was in fact a poem that I read, I think, in high school. It talks about a house with good bones. Maybe that sounds familiar to you as well. It's an incredible poem. It was so fun to just be reading this poetry collection and then get to that one and have this just wave of nostalgia of remembering this poem. And it is a beautiful poem. I absolutely loved that one within the collection. That was still my favorite, and I think it really was a standout. And this collection had a lot of ones that had similar themes to them. Most of the ones in this collection were focused on love, loss, family. Specifically, some focused on her daughter as she was growing up, and her daughter learning the ways of the world, and also just your life and your family changing over time. So I thought that was really interesting. I really enjoyed some of these poems a little bit more than others, but overall I thought it was a really solid collection and I really enjoyed reading it, especially before bed. So I give this one 4 stars. Then I finally read One Dark Window by Rachel Gillig. I feel mixed about this book because when I started it, first of all, Rachel Gillig wrote The Night and the Moth, which I absolutely love. This was one of my favorite books of last year. I tabbed it, absolutely adored this book. And I've been hearing about One Dark Window for quite some time. It's one of those like book talk books. I don't really pay attention to any of the books that become major on book talk because it is most often a luck situation, and most often I kind of disagree with some of the ones that become large on there. However, heard a lot of great things from friends. A lot of people are telling me to read it, and I love Rachel Gillig's latest, The Night and the Moth, so I wanted to read this one. I started it, and gosh, the first maybe like 50 pages were rough. It felt more so than usual that you were just tossed into something, and not in the way where you were just thrown into the middle of the action to really get you excited about what's going on and you're learning the world and all of these things. No, it felt random. It felt unintentional. The start of this book was just not strong in my opinion, and it was both a little convoluted of how the magic system worked, but then also was trying to info dump like all of this lore in one go, while somehow simultaneously not explaining anything and just being like, ah yes, she was getting the night card, and you're like, what? Okay, like what's going on? And ah yes, the voice inside of her was this creepy creature. I just feel like it needed another round of editing on that first part, because overall, as I kept reading, it was a really interesting fantasy concept. This magic system of these cards that each hold power, and whoever wields that card holds that power, but there's also negative side effects from using these cards for too long. Like there's this one called, maybe I think the Maiden card, where if you are holding it and you are wielding it, you become insanely beautiful to the point of like almost grotesquely beautiful and have this kind of almost like power over people. But then also you slowly just like lose parts of yourself as you wield it. And there's like this whole pantheon of these cards, and once you collect all of them, you can vanquish this like noxious gas that is taking over the forest, that like make you basically hysterical if you go into the forest. And anyone who has gone into the forest or like caught this disease needs to be exterminated. There's like layers upon layers upon layers, and it gets a little convoluted at times where it feels like it is trying to do so many things at the same time, and also trying to over explain it but just let you understand it and like feel into the world. And it feels like such a tug and pull between you as the reader and the story that becomes a distraction from the actual story. There's also a romance that was fine, honestly. It felt like really a bit of that caricature of like the tall brooding stranger, and he's so mysterious and he doesn't show his emotions, but actually he's squishy on the inside, which is fine. At the end of the day, I think it was a really interesting story. It just was lacking in some parts, so I gave it, I think, 3.75 technically stars. It's like a 3.5 star for me though. For the past few months, I have been reading Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This is something that one of my friends in the Netherlands, Leilani, recommended to me, and I finally read it. It took me quite some time because this is a chunker. Overall, I really enjoyed this. It did take quite some time to get into because this is a story that is told over hundreds of years. I think starting off in like the 1600s and going all the way to like 2019 or something like that. It is told over all of those years, and for good reason, because it is vampires, it is sapphic vampires, told from the perspective of this woman who then later becomes a vampire and lives out her life. And you need all of that context for the ending to really cement itself and click into place. There are a couple different POVs in this that it jumps between and like back and forth, and it really shows this first woman's progression from being this young woman who marries in order to escape her mundane life and to find something more, and then the story of her life over these decades and centuries as she changes and grows, but her body stays the same. It's wild. It's beautifully done. Just remember that that first part is slow. It takes some time to really get into it, but then once you get into it, it really just, it moves. And the way that she writes the vampires is like grotesque but sexy and dark and mysterious and so intriguing. And the way that time really impacts their psyche is fascinating. So I gave this 4 stars. So my camera died, but we are back. And next we're going to talk about The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. So you lovely humans voted on me reading The Fifth Season, or rereading The Fifth Season. I put up a poll on my YouTube and my Instagram asking if I should reread The Fifth Season or An Absolutely Remarkable Thing, because these are 2 different series that I started, I really enjoyed, and I just didn't get to the next book. And it is come to the point where I think I definitely had to reread the first book in order to continue with the series. So you guys voted for The Fifth Season, and I mean, I was excited for both of them, but I'm so happy you picked The Fifth Season because, oh my god, I'm so glad I reread this. First of all, because it's phenomenal, and I forgot basically everything that happened, so it was like I was reading a favorite book for the first time, because wow, this book is amazing. I have also since read the second book, so I'm gonna kind of talk about them both at the same time. I don't have a physical copy of the second one. I borrowed it from my library, and thank goodness it only had like a couple days wait because I read it very quickly while I was on vacation. So this world is incredible. It's basically a twist on a futuristic sci-fi fantasy world of our own, okay? So it kind of gives the impression that maybe this is Earth hundreds, thousands of years into the future. That could not be the case. This could be its own planet, but there's a lot of things that harken back to Earth, and specifically to Father Earth rather than Mother Earth, because it is such a hostile environment and the Earth is actively attacking its occupants through what they refer to as the seasons. Whenever a new season starts, it's a new season of some kind of natural geological situation happening on the planet, and the people have adapted to this as well as they can. And when this new season starts, a lot of people die. There's a lot of catastrophic events tied to them. There are also, supernatural isn't the right word, but people with special abilities and kind of magic. There are a group of people that can basically harness the power of the earth and control the tremors and the shakes and the earthquakes that the earth is putting out, and they can harness that, they can quell that, they can use that to like extend their sense of self in a way. These people are very much feared by the rest of society because these are very powerful people, and oftentimes their powers are connected to their emotions. So specifically also when they are younger, right when they're coming into their powers, they might have a strong emotional reaction and then accidentally kill someone with their abilities. So they're very much feared by society, they're ostracized by society, and they're specifically killed off by society, except for the ones that are brought into this kind of like training place, this academy where they are trained and honed their powers in order to be used by society to control these tremors and shakes and to be controlled by this like larger organization. So that already is like wild, and that's kind of what we jump into. It starts off with 3 point of views, and you start off learning about these people and their backgrounds and what is going on, and slowly things start to converge, things start to line up, make sense. You see how things are maybe interconnected and how they're playing off each other. There's also like a different type of species that are basically like these people made of stone, and they're also very much feared by society, and it's just so amazing. I absolutely loved this first one. I loved the second one. This was, I think, a 4.5 stars. The second one was either 4 or 4.5. Let's find out. I didn't rate it yet. Well, let me be the first to tell you that the second one, oh gosh, is it a 4 or 4.5? Maybe the second one is a 4. Oh man, I don't know. It was so good. Let's just say the second one's a 4.5. It was incredible. I loved it. I can't wait to read the third one in the series and to finish these off. I loved them. Next up, I read The Paradise Problem by Christina Lauren. This was perfect. I read this on vacation while visiting my parents in Fiji, and this was exactly what I needed. It was romantic and just so well written, and honestly a couple layers deeper than I was expecting. It's about this young woman who just got fired from her job working at a convenience store. She's trying to make it as an artist, and she is literally the epitome of a struggling artist. She's trying to figure out how she can pay rent but then also pay for her father's hospital bills, and she's just trying to figure out what to do while she only has $30 in her banking account. Meanwhile, the male love interest comes from a very rich family, and funnily enough, the story starts off with them getting divorced and about how she actually wasn't that sad on the day of their divorce, and you find out why later. And it's really interesting, and it's such a fun hook into the story because I feel like it fully throws you off, and then you're so intrigued by how the most emotional part of her day was the new PS5 game that she was playing, not like the signing of the divorce papers and her husband moving out, and how it was just like any other day. And then it starts back up again years later, where he basically asks her to come to his family's wedding on a remote island for reasons that I won't go into because it's a fun little surprise if you don't know. So that was super fun. It was honestly, it was more than like 400 pages, but it was so well paced and such an interesting story. And there was just so many different things going on and it felt so natural that it didn't feel super long. It just kept going and there was so much story to tell. The ending was very well done. It was very fun. I really enjoyed it. I think it was honestly a 4-star read for me. Last book we're going to talk about today is The Rarest Fruit. This is by Gael Belem. And this was such a fascinating read. This basically takes place in the 19th century on Reunion Island, and it is the story about Edmund Albius, who was a Creole boy born to slaves and basically revolutionized the vanilla industry by discovering how to pollinate vanilla plants. Basically, Europeans, with I think the arrival of Cortez in Latin America, brought back vanilla pods, brought back specifically already ripened vanilla to Europe, and then were not able to figure out how to pollinate the plants in order to make the pods actually ripen into the vanilla bean that they were also obsessed with. No one was able to figure out except for this Creole boy born into slavery, Edmund. This is a fascinating story. I really enjoyed, honestly, how the author laid out the entire tale. It kind of starts out with this story of vanilla and how it came to Reunion Island, then it goes into the story of him being born, his entire life, a lot of twists and turns that happened to him, especially when slaves were freed and finally freed in Reunion Island, and then the turns that his life took after that, and how he was and wasn't recognized for being the founder of how to pollinate vanilla, and how he really dedicated his life to botany, and then kind of where the tale ends up. And it was really well done. I really enjoyed this story. It was a 4-star read for me. So those were all of the books that I recently read. Most of these, like I said, I read in May, with just a couple of them in March and April. So let me know if you have read any of these, if you enjoyed them, or if you didn't, let me know why. And what was your most favorite recent read? Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!